Okay, great. So hi everyone and welcome to UX Insiders. For anyone who is attending for the first time, my name is Rachel. I'm a researcher here at the UX Design Institute. And at the UX Design Institute, we offer a range of online courses for people who are looking to launch their career in UX design. So these events, they're a series of live events that we host. On each event, we are joined by some of the most interesting and creative people in the field of UX. So the idea behind these events is to give some insight into what it's actually like to work in the UX industry. And today we're really lucky to be joined by Emilie Mazurek, who is a senior UX designer. So today Emilie is going to talk to us all about how she transitioned into UX from an unrelated career. So Emilie has a really interesting background. So yeah, we're going to hear all about that and how she moved into UX. So just before we officially begin, just want to mention that there'll be time for questions at the end of Emilie's talk. So if I could just ask anybody who's tuning in, if you could type your questions in the questions panel. And also if you see a question that you're particularly interested in, if you just upvote it, that way I'll know it's a question that a couple of people want to hear the answer to. So Emilie, you're very welcome to UX Insiders. We're really glad to have you tonight.
Great. Thank you so much for the nice intro, Rachel. Exciting, interesting person. That's very generous. I'll take it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so I can get started.
Yeah, perfect. I know you have your presentation on landing your first job, and I'm sure everybody's ready to get straight into it. So that's great.
Okay, awesome. I'll go ahead and get right in then. So I've titled it, So You've Got Your UX Diploma, Now What? I thought that was like a little bit catchy. Maybe you'll agree, disagree, whatnot. So just a little bit of background. That's me. Hi, my name is Emilie Mazurek, and I'm located in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I know there's a lot of people tuning in internationally, so a quick map here for you. If you know where Banff is in Canada, it's a very popular touristic destination. I'm about 1 hour away from that in the mountains. Great spot. A little bit more about me. I take ice cream and hot chocolate very seriously. There's a festival actually in every February where I try to go to as many hot chocolates as I can, giving unsolicited reviews that nobody asked for. And also worth mentioning that it's maybe interesting to some people is I have a pet named Cheeto. He's a sun conure. If you hear any squawking, just best to get that out of the way now. That's likely him.
Thanks for the heads up. Good to know.
Absolutely, yeah. So jumping into my background a little bit, from a young age, I thought that I wanted to be a doctor. There's prestige, a sense of accomplishment and achievement, a title, you have to push yourself, it's a challenge. And I was up for it and I was really excited about it. But the further I got down the path, the less and less certain I actually became. So I studied biochemistry in university. I wrote the MCAT. I volunteered in a microbiology lab. I volunteered abroad working in a medical clinic. I did everything that you were supposed to do to become the best candidate and really kind of fell in love with that. And it was kind of scary. I was applying for school, recognizing that I would get a spot likely, and actually being more afraid that I would get in rather than get rejected. So it kind of came to this decision where I was like, maybe this isn't the path for me or something that's going to be the best fit. So what do you do from there? It kind of felt like my entire life had led up to that point, and I was just turning around and walking in the other direction. So I actually pursued career counseling because I wanted to make an informed decision. And one of the options that came up that could be a good fit was UX design. And I love this slide because this is just totally not reflective of what it's like working as a UX designer, but it's what everybody thinks when you think about it, right? So bless Unsplash. All of my images are stolen from their website today, but UX design, there's this creative problem solving component to it, which really played to my strengths as a hospitality worker. I was in the hospitality industry for over a decade, serving tables, not glamorous, but I really enjoyed it. I got to talk to a wide variety of people on a daily basis and solve their problems for them. So I have an allergy to this. What can I have? I have to be out in half an hour. What can you make for me? I have 10 people instead of 6. Can you accommodate us? So I really enjoyed that creative problem solving side, but just wanted something with a bit more impact. And then there's also, this research driven, data informed, analytical side of UX that played to my strengths as a scientist. And ultimately, the whole idea is that UX is advocating for the user or helping people, which is why I was excited about medicine in the first place. So there you go. That's me falling in love with UX and thought that it was going to be a great fit. So I ended up receiving my diploma in UX design in April of 2021, landed a job fairly soon after that, and have been working in the industry full-time since then. So I was working as a product designer first at Proposify, for a little over a year. They're a B2B SaaS company, and I got to be involved in every step of the process from, understanding the problem and strategy to interviewing customers, all the way to the final deliverable and assessing the impact of our results. I was also doing some freelance contract work part-time because more is more, and I just can't get enough, obviously. So in the evenings, I was working at a startup. They had a website that they didn't like, and they were trying to get money from investors, so they wanted to spruce it up. So I was doing more of the visual and branding design for them. And then recently, I was actually promoted through a new opportunity at Barstool Sports as a senior UX UI designer there, where I was working recently. So that's all great, but you get your diploma and then what? So I'm going to walk through some of the tips that I found helpful for me into making that transition. So they're in no particular order, and it's not exhaustive, but hopefully this will help you guide you on your journey and give you some advice that maybe you hadn't considered before. So the first thing that nobody wants to hear, and I was one of those people too, is networking. Like, why does this feel like such a dirty word? I don't know why, but it was just like, I kind of dreaded it, right? Like, I'm trying to go meet people. I'm hoping they're going to offer me a job. I don't really feel that confident in my abilities. The whole thing was just so uncomfortable. But I knew that I had to do it because there's statistics out there that 75% of jobs are never posted and 80% are filled through networking. So it's a huge missed opportunity if you're not taking advantage of it. So I felt like I had to go out and set up all these coffee chats with strangers I didn't know. And that was really outside of my comfort zone, but I was kind of looking at it all wrong, because networking is not just about having coffee chats with strangers. It's just about meeting people, getting to know them in your industry, and building a foundation that you can later rely on. So a couple tips that might be beneficial for you when looking at networking is actually to start early. I know it seems counterintuitive because you're like, oh, maybe I'm still in my program. I don't really know that much. I don't feel confident in what I have to share, but it's all about, again, building that foundation of people that you can later talk to and, hey, I'm doing this now. What do you think about this? And then that's how that relationship starts to form more naturally, and when opportunities can then arise. Another thing that I kind of had wrong from the beginning, maybe it's just me, but I was really going in there trying to sell myself and, pitch, I can do this, I can do that. But it's really about listening to the other person, being curious, and having a genuine conversation with them. That's how the best relationships are going to get formed. If you're not going into it, trying to get this huge ask out of them. So just go into it with an open mind, be curious, and, try to learn about them. And this is maybe more of an advanced tool depending on how seriously you're taking your networking. But now I'm using a CRM because it's kind of to the point where I meet people, I chat with them, I go home, and I can easily forget. And that's really embarrassing when you meet them again. You're like, oh, we should connect on LinkedIn. And they're like, we are connected. So I found a free template on Notion. All of these resources that I share throughout this presentation are actually going to be put into an article that I typed out. So don't feel like you have to take a bunch of notes if you don't want to. Rachel's going to share the link to that after. It'll have everything that you need, as well as a detailed outline of everything I'm talking about. But again, this is what this looks like. You can put the name of the person, where you met them, what the last update was. Oh, they were going on vacation. Make sure to ask them about that. It might feel like it's kind of cheating or disingenuous, but it's much worse to be in the other situation where you're meeting someone again and you don't remember what you talked about last time. So again, free might be something you want to check out. All right, so the next tip is to get a support system. And again, like the cheesiest picture I could find, like nobody does this, right? Like this is like grade 7 when you're taking a cool picture for Instagram. But the point still remains, right? Once you graduate, it's a very isolating and lonely experience. And it's hard to know if you're doing the right things to get you in the position that you're looking for. So I recommend getting a group of peers from your program or online that are in a similar position to you that you can meet up with on a regular basis and just discuss your process and your progress. So again, this is something to look forward to. It's kind of a tough situation to be in on the job search. If I have a recurring meeting once a week, or maybe it gets down to bi-monthly or whatever the cadence is, I'm excited to see my friends. I'm excited to share my progress with them. I'm excited to hear about their progress. And it becomes something positive in your schedule that you can look forward to. It also helps hold you accountable. If I know I'm meeting 4 of my friends and they've been on the job search, rewriting their resume, taking interviews, I'm going to want to be doing the same. So it's a nice way to push yourself to keep going. also really great to learn from each other. You know, if my friend has an interview and they got asked a really interesting question and they weren't sure how to answer, we can all talk together. Maybe my friend got a volunteer experience through a website that I didn't know about and they can share that with me, and vice versa. So it's a great way to organically keep learning about the experience. And then also it's a very safe place to vent. I don't know about you, but I've been in trouble before on LinkedIn for posting things maybe I shouldn't have. Definitely want to try to keep that professional. That's a lesson I've learned early on. So if you want to complain, some close friends is a good place to do it. And it's also good to have hope because you'll see the progress that everybody is making as well. I just thought this was a fun picture, but basically this is all about investing in your application package so we can pretend that that's you in your application package. And what do I mean by this? This is basically 3 parts: portfolio, a resume, and cover letter. And let's start with the portfolio. Everybody knows that this is one of the most important things that you're going to be consistently asked for when you're applying for UX jobs. You're going to want to have a handful of case studies on there. You're going to want it represent your personality, and you're also going to want to have it be memorable and enticing to your recruiters. And that's often easier said than done. I think it's really important, though, for the reason that you want to invest in this application package is that, you know, the market is really tough out there. If there's anything within your control, make sure that's done to the best of your abilities. So how can you make sure that your portfolio is done really well? Get feedback and get a lot of it. When I was applying for jobs, I booked multiple sessions on ADP List. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that platform. I'm actually even mentoring on that platform now, but it stands for Amazing Design Person List. A bunch of senior, lead, manager, UX designers are offering free mentorship on that platform. Free. If you're not taking advantage of it now, definitely do. You can have coffee chats, portfolio and resume reviews, and that's what I'm recommending you use it for now. So in terms of the portfolio review, I would go into it and say, this is my portfolio. Any feedback you give me will be beneficial. Nothing you say will be taken personally by me. I really am trying to improve this. So that there's this precedence that, you know, I'm not necessarily looking for compliments. I want the feedback that I can actually make things better. And I continued doing that until the feedback was consistently positive. I also have a really great article that I found revolutionized the way that I looked at putting together a portfolio, and it really emphasizes the importance of storytelling in your portfolio, something that's often overlooked by many junior designers. Again, that's going to be linked in the article that Rachel shares later, so definitely check that out. Another thing that you'll want to keep in mind is the resume. It's easy to overlook because we're spending so much time on our portfolio, right? But the reality is many hiring managers and recruiters will see your resume long before they ever see your portfolio, if they even make it that far. So it's critical that you actually invest a lot of time into your resume. As a designer, it's important that it's clean, scannable, designed nicely, but not over-designed. There's a very fine line. And you want to make sure that it has, you know, impact of everything that you've done. It's kind of your highlights of what you've achieved over your profession. So this is also hard too, because people are a bit like, oh, you know, I'm transitioning from a different background. Maybe it's not relevant. If you would have saw my resume when I was first applying, it would have said laboratory assistant, waitress, and what was the other one? Marching band technician. And the people would be like, this resume is in the wrong pile. But there's a way that you can actually make your past experience sound UX. So for waitressing, for example, instead of, you know, served 6 table sections, food and drink, I created the ultimate guest experience for every customer that walked in the door. Like, there's a very different way that you can tell that story, and that's how you're going to want to plan out your resume. So I recommend checking out Resume AI by Juan Salting if you haven't before. Again, free tool online, linked in the article that I'm going to share, where you can type in your role, what you did, and AI will spit out bullet points for you with metrics that you can fill in that will take your resume from the first example I shared to something impressive and impactful. So definitely check that out. And then the last part of your application package is actually going to be your cover letter. This is like a very controversial topic, and I know nobody loves writing a cover letter. I'm the same. But again, in my eyes, if there's any way that I'm going to be able to stand out, I'm going to do that. So the cover letter, as much as you want to personalize it for every job, doesn't necessarily have to be from top to bottom personalized for each job. So the template I used was basically explaining my skill set and my background from my resume in more detail to explain why it was an asset. So, you know, my background as a biochemist makes me analytical, data-driven, and I can bring that skill set to my UX position. my background in hospitality, XYZ, and it was the exact same thing. And then I would include, the first paragraph, I'm looking at this company with this position, and I'm interested because of one sentence in regards to the company. So that way it's still personalized, but manageable at the same time to tailor your cover letter for each application. All right, and the next point is find what makes you unique. So I kind of got into this a little bit with the last one, but basically, look at your background. What sets you apart from everybody else applying, and lean into that. That's going to be your biggest asset moving forward. So again, I already mentioned my background in science. I was in, school with all of these graphic designers, and the work that they were producing was phenomenal, exponentially better looking than the work I was doing. And I was really worried. I was like, how am I going to compete with all of these people? I couldn't make designs that looked as good as theirs. And it's actually funny that I looked at it that way because I was just totally in the wrong mindset. The reason I actually got hired at my first position, and I was hired over somebody with 5 years of experience in UX, is because of my background as a scientist. They wanted somebody comfortable running experiments, doing A/B testing, who understood the scientific method and was analytical thinking that way. So it became my biggest asset and my biggest selling feature. Even in hospitality, not as glamorous, not the thing that people are as excited to talk to me about, but I use the skills that I developed in hospitality every day as a UX designer, the soft skills, right? And those are the things that are not easy to learn necessarily in a program that's teaching you the fundamentals of UX design. Those are the things that take a lot of time, investment, and practice over the years. So the fact that I've developed those, I have a strong sense of communication. I talked with all of those random people over the years. I can have a conversation with anybody. I've collaborated with the team, working events or large tables needing to collaborate together. Again, the problem solving that I already went into before, all of those items are things that I could bring up that were an asset that other people maybe didn't bring to the table that set me apart. So all you need to do is find what makes you unique and figure out those things. And it can be as simple as a Google search. Waitress versus UX designer. I'm serious. Start there, look at the points, see what resonates with you, and you can take it from there. All right, so the next part is to organize your search. And this is critical because things can quickly derail and you're going to be at a disadvantage if you don't keep things neat and tidy. And what do I mean by this is I 100% recommend using a job tracking tool. I used Hunter. The first 40 jobs I think you post are free. This is what it looks like. It's kind of fun, colorful, drag and drop. And it actually helped to get me excited about the job process. Even if it's applied and I'm dragging it over to rejected, I'm cleaning out the applied column and I have my wish list. And it, kind of is a way for me to check in and save all the information that I need for my interviews if I'm landing them. So this is a snapshot from my job search in 2021. And in terms of that, the most important thing that you can actually save during your job search is a copy of the job description. And this came back to bite me so many times. I had to learn the hard way, and I hope you definitely don't have to do this. But save a copy of the job description. Why? Because in UX design, the hiring manager probably wrote that, and that's your golden ticket to who they're looking for in the role. So think about questions like, you always know you're going to be asked, tell me about yourself. And it will be easy for me to go into my background and this is my work experience. But if the job description is really emphasizing they want somebody who's comfortable with design systems, for example, I'm going to work that into my answer. If they talk about somebody that needs a lot of mobile experience, I'm going to prioritize talking about that. And it can be tricky as well. They can ask other questions like, what would your colleagues say would be like working with you? And it'd be very easy for me to be like, oh, I'm fun. I bring good energy to the team. I'm analytical based on my background. Look at the job description. See what qualities they're looking for in the candidate. That's what you should really highlight. So really drill that down. In Hunter, you can actually just copy and paste the entire job description and save a URL to where you found the job description. But make sure you copy and paste the actual description, because once the role's been live for a bit, they could potentially take it down before you interview, and then you have nothing to reference. So you need that. Make sure that you save it. Sometimes this is what it legitimately feels like, but building your online presence. And I know this is intimidating for a lot of people. So I'm just going to focus on starting small. I like to speak at presentations. I'm on podcasts, I'm trying to start a YouTube channel. You don't have to do any of that. I just want to make that abundantly clear. You can start very small and little things can have a huge impact. So the first one, let's just focus on LinkedIn. That's something that I have a little bit of experience with. And I know a little bit about and can genuinely help set you apart from other people who are applying for a job. And the reason that I first bring up fill out your entire profile is because did you know that if you don't fill out your entire profile, your profile may not turn up in search results from recruiters, which was baffling to me and is obviously one of the most important reasons we're having our profile on LinkedIn. So make sure you fill it all out. Even if you don't think it's necessarily relevant, it tells your story, it adds value, and it helps with the SEO, with the search engine optimization. If people are searching UX designer and Emilie mentions it 100 times in her profile and Sue mentions it once, Emilie's going to rise to the top of the list and Sue is going to be on the 100th page. So think about how much detail you can add and where you can add those keywords. And maximize your skills is another one. We're going to put UX design, we'll put UI design, we'll put, user testing, and then what else do I put? How do I figure out, I can put 50 skills, but which one should I add? Go to people's profiles that have the job that you want and look at the skills that they have. Obviously, I'm not saying to put those skills if you don't personally have them, but it's a good way to kind of jog your memory in terms of the things that you've learned and can bring to the table. And another smart way to actually tackle this is to go to a job that you are interested in having. And a lot of times they will have, you've matched 7 out of 10 of the skills listed for this. You can click on that and see the 10 skills they've listed. Do that for 5 or 6 jobs. You'll have a good list of the skills that you should have on your profile to ding those bells with recruiters. One of the most impactful things you can do is actually to get some references. And this is one of the harder things to do because it can be, again, uncomfortable to reach out to somebody and ask them to write something nice about you. So do it in a tailored way. Approach someone that you feel comfortable with and ask them to write you something about a specific thing. So, hi, Adrian, we work together. I would really appreciate if you could write me a reference on LinkedIn. Just 2 to 3 sentences would be great. And if you could talk about my collaboration skills. Boom, there's an expectation that it's short and sweet and they know exactly what you want them to talk about. That makes it a little bit easier for them on their side to actually deliver, and it makes it, a little bit easier to approach that situation. And then the last thing you can do is get active. Again, you don't have to post on LinkedIn if you don't want to. I know that is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And for me, when I was first starting, I felt exactly the same. You can just like and comment on other people's posts. That's a great way to get started and legitimately put your name out there. If you're posting consistently a comment on somebody's posts that you like, they're going to start to recognize your name over and over again. And that creates a very natural way for you to start a conversation with them, send them a friend request, potentially have a coffee chat with them, get to know them and start building that network. So it can just take the smallest things. Even just liking posts is enough of a start. So don't feel like you have to write big posts 5 times a week. You don't have to do that. You can start small. This is how I felt when I realized this next one, but oh no, this is get your interview answer. I still kind of felt like this for this one too. It's the next one I'm thinking of. But in terms of the get your interview answers ready, this was like mind-blowing to me in a way because it's so simple and so obvious now that I'm looking back at it. But interviews are very predictable. As much as they're intimidating and many people are not excited about them, it's because we don't have a lot of experience with them generally. But you can get experience with them and practice. It's literally as simple as that. So this is the step-by-step guide that I use to help me get better and better at interviews. And the first thing you can do, seriously, straight back to Google, common UX interview questions. Hundreds will populate. Pick the top 20 or 30 that are the most common, put them on a document, and then write an answer for each. It's great because you will probably get asked the majority of these questions in an interview, and you will have an answer prepared that you've already thought about. So it's not going to trick you or stump you, ready to go. So you can feel a little bit more calm and confident going in. The next thing is to actually prepare stories for behavioral questions. And this is a little bit more intimidating because the behavioral questions are not always the same. And, you need a personalized story for each one of them. And if you're not familiar with what a behavioral interview question is, just for context, it's a tell me about a time when X, or tell me about a time when you did Y type of question. And that's tough because, you have to think of a story on the spot. But you don't, because a lot of these behavioral questions are kind of on the same premise and asking for the same things. They're generally asking, tell me about a success or failure that you had. Tell me about a time when you had to show leadership, or tell me about a time where you didn't get along with someone or had to, make a change last minute, whatever it could be. Those are the general ideas. So do some research on what the questions could be like and have a couple of stories prepared that could be used for different answers. So I had 4 or 5 stories ready to go, and any interview that I went into and they asked a question, I could pick from one of those 4 or 5 stories ready to go in my brain, laid out in a concise way that answered the question clearly, and I didn't get stumped or tricked on it. The next part that sucks that you have to do is to practice. And there's 2 good ways that you can go about this. The first one is to record yourself. And how uncomfortable is that? Nobody likes it. Just answer the questions without the answers obviously on the page, and record yourself and watch it back. It will make you cringe, but it's extremely good practice, and you will learn a lot of things that you didn't recognize before. So maybe your posture is weird. Maybe you have very awkward body language. Maybe you've got a twitch in your eye. I don't know what it could be. Maybe you say a lot. That's something that's very common that people don't always pick up on. You'll pick up on it as soon as you watch the footage back. I recommend you do that at least once just to give it a try. The other method that I also recommend you try is ADP list. Again, you can have a mock interview on there for free with hiring managers. Like, I need to say this with flashing lights, amazing resource that many people are not taking advantage of. You can search by who's offering mock interviews. And I also recommend you search by the seniority. So good chance that managers, leads, or directors will be in charge of interviews. So filter by those people because they're going to have 5 years of hiring experience. Those are the people that are going to have the answers that you want and will give you feedback instantly on how you're interviewing and what you can do to improve. And finally, after you've practiced enough, maybe you've even had an interview, it's time to debrief after the interview. Was there any questions they asked you that were unexpected? Anything they asked that stumped you? Write it down now before you forget so that you don't go into the next interview and have the same problem. Obviously have an answer prepared, and you can cycle through this. The more you do it, the more comfortable you will get and the easier it will become. This is the one I was talking about. This is how I felt. Keep learning and refining your craft. I put in so much work in my program, and it was like, hey, you're graduated, but you're not done yet. Obviously, of course, there's always more to learn, right? But I was like, oh, I'm just ready to land a job. I didn't realize there'd be so much more effort that has to go into this. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, that's just the reality of the situation. Take this as an opportunity to dive into some topics that maybe didn't get as much face time as you wanted. I was really interested in prototyping and interaction design. So I went and learned how to create Lottie files and use After Effects. And that was a skill set that I could use that many other designers in my position didn't have. Maybe you want to dip into learning a little bit of CSS and HTML that can help you communicate with developers better. There's a ton of different topics. Pick any. It doesn't have to be a specific one. Anything that interests you, dive in a little deeper. You can also look for volunteer experiences. That's a great way to get hands-on experience that you can put straight on your resume. Or even hackathons is another great opportunity. I competed in a hackathon with my colleagues from school. We didn't place, and actually it wasn't the most positive experience for me, but I had a great behavioral interview story that I could pull from it after. So I still learned something and it's valuable. So keep working on that. And it's kind of strategic ways in which you can show this as well. So I entered a hackathon. I shared that on LinkedIn. I took a course on LinkedIn Learning. I know in North America, it's very common that if you have a library card, you get free access to LinkedIn Learning Online, which has a bunch of free courses you can take, many related to UX design. So I was trying to aim for once a month, get a new certificate, post it on my LinkedIn. So when a recruiter or hiring manager goes on my page, they see, oh, she graduated in April, but she took a course in June and July. And she looks like, it's obvious that I'm invested in continuous learning. So figure out what's interesting to you and dive in just a little bit deeper. And this one's kind of funny. I love this picture of the kid, but listen to the feedback you're receiving, right? So I see this all the time on LinkedIn. Maybe it's just me, but at first I was like, oh, I just feel so bad for these people. And of course, there's still empathy for people in this situation, but you have to read between the lines. So this is what I'm talking about. I've applied for more than 150 job listings in the last 2 months. Many interviews, no offers due to salary experience. I'm not giving up. Okay, that sucks for that person. I get it. Here's the next one. I've applied to more than 200 jobs since January. No interviews, no offers. It's tough, but I'll keep going. Okay. I've applied to more than 1,200 jobs since September. And right? You kind of start to shake your head, right? Because there's a pattern here, okay? And I'm not saying that it's all the fault of the applicant, but you have to listen to the feedback that you are getting. So if you're applying to, let's not even say 1,200, let's say 300 jobs and you're not hearing back, the reason is probably your portfolio, resume, or cover letter. That's the gateway to that next chapter. If you're getting interviews but not progressing to the next rounds, you probably need to keep practicing your delivery. If you're getting to the portfolio presentation but not making it to final rounds, you probably need to work on your storytelling. You know, you can listen to the feedback that you're receiving or not and interpret it in a way that's strategic to move forward. And finally, take a break. Seriously, like it's a slog. The job search, I'm not trying to say that it's all, so cut and dry. It can be a lot, and it can feel like we put so much pressure on ourselves to always be doing the next thing. I have to be learning this. I have to keep working on my portfolio. I have a session for this, a networking event. Don't burn yourself out. We don't perform our best when we're burning the candle at both ends. It's okay to take a break, and you don't have to feel bad about it. You don't have to spend 8 hours a day on the job search. You can spend 4 high quality hours a day and take a break the rest of the day and not feel bad about it. I give you permission. You don't have to feel bad. So make sure you're taking the time that you need for yourself, because your mental health is just as important as landing that next role, if not more. So please make sure you're prioritizing that as well. And how am I doing for time? Oh, perfect. Okay, I think that takes us to the end here. So if you have any questions, I'm sure there's many. I'd love to open up the floor.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for that, Emily. It was really, really great. And I can see from the chat there's lots of engagement and lots of questions. So thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. And I think you made some really important points the whole way through. I loved your final picture of the beach. Kind of makes me want to be on a beach.
Oh, me too. I can always take an excuse to find a vacation. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there's questions kind of across the board, but I'm going to jump in with one here just on the portfolio, because I know that's always an important area. So yeah, maybe this is something you can speak to, especially given your background. But somebody here is asking, how do you build a portfolio in UX when you're working in a different field?
So if you're working in a different field, are there any projects that you've done that are UX related? Not maybe specifically UX, but something that you can tie the design thinking process through. If you don't have anything that's necessarily relevant, that's a great time to take up passion projects, do a hackathon, anything like that. Maybe you can find some volunteer experience. It doesn't always necessarily have to be real experience. I just want to make abundantly clear that I was able to land my first job with 3 academic projects on my portfolio. So don't have so much pressure to have 3 full case studies working with real companies. You can find a way to make your past experience relevant if there's some framework there. And if not, find something that interests you and bring that to the table.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, I think there's always, from volunteering to, there's volunteer projects you can do in design. There's lots of options for working on projects. They don't always have to be related to having a job in UX, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And I know you've kind of covered this, but I'm going to just ask the question to reiterate it for everyone. But a couple of questions came in early on in your presentation about whether or not people should include their experience from previous roles in their resume, their portfolio, or if it's not relevant, should they just exclude it? Now I know you spoke a lot about how your past career can actually be what's unique about your application, but maybe you could just speak to that once more, just to reiterate that point around previous experience.
Yeah, it's on you to make your previous experience relevant. So like I was mentioning, if somebody looked at my resume the first time, they would have been confused. But I had an objective that was one sentence. My background in biochemistry means XYZ. My background in hospitality allows me to have the skills ABC. And then my cover letter, another example of how I further drilled down how relevant my past was. So if I don't make the connection, there's a good chance that the recruiter or hiring manager won't either. So it's on you to take responsibility for that and make it relatable. There's always going to be something that's relevant, even if it's soft skills or the analytical skills that I brought as a scientist. Figure it out. It doesn't have to be that hard, and just highlight that and make sure that it's prominent in your application.
Yeah, exactly. I know you mentioned working in the service industry. I mean, the empathy that you need in that is very relevant to a career in UX. So I think, yeah,
Absolutely, yes.
100.
There's many transferable skills from many different industries, and I'm just brushing on the two that are relevant to me. So the list is endless. There's always going to be a connection you can draw.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a question here around imposter syndrome, which is it's a difficult one to answer. So don't feel like you have to solve imposter syndrome for us. But we do have someone wondering, do you ever suffer from imposter syndrome? And if you do, what techniques do you use to kind of manage that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Still suffer from imposter syndrome to this day, unfortunately. It's something that seems to get better with time, but then a new opportunity presents itself. Hey, you're a senior designer, but you only have 1 year of experience. Do I belong here? Am I doing enough? It happens to the best of people. So that's something that I like to remember as well. It's not just me that's feeling this way. And I also take comfort in knowing that imposter syndrome is generally just a recognition of a gap in knowledge. So I was nervous about my first job because I hadn't worked in tech before, not because I would be bad at it, but I didn't really know what to expect. So the more I went into it with an open mind and recognized that it was okay to be feeling that way, they hired me knowing I didn't have any experience in tech. So there's not this expectation for me to be the best designer in the world. Just be realistic and honest about how I'm feeling with my manager. And I was able to gradually learn and get more comfortable as time went on, and it gradually decreased. So just recognizing that it's very common. Many people, I'd say most people, deal with it, and it's okay. We don't always have to feel like it's the worst thing. We can just embrace it and keep moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never really met anyone who hasn't experienced it at one time or another.
I would love to meet that person and ask them. Yeah, please tell me.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I like your answer there in terms of, taking control of that. And if it's because you maybe don't know much about an area, learning a little bit more about it will give you kind of that feeling of power back. So I think that's some nice advice. So I know, Emily, that you actually did a course in UX design, and we just have some people kind of asking a little bit about that. So I guess I'm just wondering, what do you see as the benefits of taking a formal course in UX design in terms of how does it help prepare you to break into the UX industry?
For me, I looked at going like the self-taught route, and I felt like maybe I could do that, but I recognized I probably didn't have the discipline to do it in a way that was, going to be holistic in terms of all of the information that I needed to gain to make me feel confident launching that next chapter of my career. So for me, it was really valuable because I knew the quality instruction would be good. I was going to have people that have done this before offering support throughout the entire process. And maybe most importantly, something to hold me accountable, deadlines, a price tag that made me feel compelled to put my best foot forward. And, I was able to get it done in a timely fashion rather than if I had been self-taught, God knows if I would still be doing that right now or doing something else. So that was very helpful for me. And again, helped me build that confidence, knowing that I have a very strong foundation of what I need to know to land that first role.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, definitely. I think I would be with you on the keeping you on track and accountable.
Yes.
And yeah, definitely. So a hot topic at the moment is AI and how that's going to impact UX. Again, it's a difficult one to answer, so I don't expect you to have all the answers on it. We actually did a webinar a couple of weeks back on AI. If anybody wants to tune into that one another time, but yeah, what's your take on AI and what kind of opportunities do you see for UX designers?
Yeah, it's super interesting to watch and to get to use some of that technology as well. I know Chat GPT, like helping me write cover letters, helping me practice for interviews, helping me respond to recruiters on LinkedIn. I'm taking full advantage, and you definitely should too. It's exciting to see that come into play. And I know there's some worry that, it could potentially take our jobs away. And I just don't think that that's the reality, because you still need someone at the end of the day. I don't know if I hate to be that person that's like, have you seen this meme? But there's like the meme of like AI taking, the job of the UX designer, and it's like four hands shaking one. And it's like, it's close, but not quite. So we're always going to need that UX designer at the end of the day, to have an oversight of everything. I think it's really exciting though. Like, it's awesome to see this coming up. I was working at an AI startup actually last year, helping them with their visual and branding design. So getting to have my toes in that a little bit more and see how that's impacting, B2B businesses as well as, designers on the front lines. There's some great tools coming out. I've even seen tools where it's like, make a slide deck, just input the information you want. I would save hours. So I'm looking at it more the exciting way of like, these are tools that I can bring into my workflow to help save me time potentially, but who knows? Like, it's kind of seems like it's infinite possibilities with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think naturally, when something like this kind of comes up, people can feel a bit uncertain, a little bit fearful, maybe. But certainly, we would agree with the idea that it's actually an exciting time. It's a time to kind of make our work a bit more efficient and leave more time for the things UX designers love to do rather than maybe the admin side. So it's all good.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, perfect. So a couple of questions coming in, just wondering about getting that first job in UX, and I think sometimes there can be a bit of chat and talk about it being difficult to get that first job, and maybe people feeling a little bit disheartened. So I just wonder if you could speak a little bit about that for anybody who's maybe thinking about making the move to UX but is hesitating because of maybe hearing that it's a bit too difficult. What advice would you have?
I think if this is something that you're serious about doing and really want to do, don't let that hold you back or be an excuse not to try. Is never going to be the perfect time to apply. So we can always, lean on excuses. If you want to make it happen, you can make it happen. I know there's a lot of talk about all the layoffs in tech and this being historically a bad time to apply for jobs. And there's some truth to that. It can be challenging. There aren't as many junior roles as the demand is allowing for, but it doesn't mean that there aren't still some out there and that they can't be found. So definitely don't give up hope. And if this is something that you want, you can go for it and it can happen. I'm still seeing that happening on a daily basis on LinkedIn with people I'm connected with. I landed my first role as a junior product designer. That could be you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's good advice to, yeah, definitely go out there and I think you're right. If you want it, you should definitely give it a go. 100%.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So a couple of people, I know you mentioned networking a lot, and I think people are maybe just looking for a little bit of guidance on that. Would you have any kind of like ideas around groups or where people can go to almost start out? I think maybe it can be a little bit daunting. If you're not used to networking or how to go about that, maybe you could tell us a little bit more of, what advice would you have for somebody just starting out to try and do that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different routes I took that were maybe a bit more sneaky because I felt so uncomfortable with it at first. But again, ADP list, book coffee chats with those people. They're used to having coffee chats with junior designers. They're not there to judge you. They're just there to help and they want to help. They're donating their time for free. So I can't express that enough. That's a very safe space where you can be vulnerable, share how you're feeling, and practice before maybe approaching some people at companies you would really want to chat with or have, conversations with, just to kind of warm up. Another thing that I didn't necessarily realize was networking at the time was just reaching out to people on LinkedIn. For me, that's very easy. Sending a connection request, adding a note, hi, so-and-so. I noticed we're both part of this community. I'd love to stay connected. That's it. And then there's another person in your network that they're going to see your posts, or maybe you'll see theirs. It starts to form that relationship organically. And you can find these people through different groups on LinkedIn. I'm a part of several different UX groups. There's many different great Slack channels around the world. I'm part of many. Design X is a great one out of Toronto with a ton of senior and lead designers that offer great insights there. I'm part of Ladies Who UX Amsterdam, even though I'm not in Amsterdam. Maybe I'll move there one day. And it's a great community of people that are offering helpful advice and that you can connect with that want to meet other people. And even if it's not UX specific, there's other platforms like Lunch Club. I don't know if you've heard of that. You can set up basically coffee chats. You'll get randomly paired just to practice talking with someone. And they're there for the same reason, to maybe meet someone, share an idea. Pretty low stakes because it's somebody random that you've never met before and might ever meet again if you don't want to. So there's lots of different ways that you can approach this and ways to find people to chat with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think, you've mentioned ADP list a couple of times, and it's a great resource. And as you say, it's free. People are volunteering.
Free is great.
Yeah. And people are volunteering their time to do it. So you're not going to catch them unexpectedly.
Yes.
That's what they're there for. It's a nice starting point, I think. Okay, great. So we have a question here just on your portfolio coming from a boot camp or a course. So how do you kind of differentiate your portfolio? Sometimes, different students can be working on the same projects. They can end up looking a little bit the same or, not being too differentiated. Do you have any advice on how you can kind of avoid that and stand out?
Yeah, so there's two parts to this. The first one, is that hiring managers, when they're hiring junior designers, are not necessarily looking for the standout, most shiny portfolio. They're actually looking for reasons to eliminate you. So go in with that mindset, right? It's all about the quality of the work that you're putting. It doesn't have to be flashy or fancy. It just has to be well done. If it looks similar to somebody else's portfolio, you have similar topics, that's okay. You don't have to feel bad about that. The way that you can stand out is by really focusing on the storytelling and what's interesting in each case study. So something that I see a lot of people get wrong is having this formulaic and cookie cutter approach when it comes to portfolios. This was the goal of the project. This is the research we did. This is the interviews we did. Then we talked to this person. This was the key findings. Then we get to the persona. And all those steps are important, but it's not really reflective of how the industry actually works. I have yet to work on a single project where I start at 0 and go to 100. You start somewhere in the middle, you revisit, you come back, you iterate. So it doesn't have to be so linear necessarily. And I would really emphasize the parts that were interesting to you, because those are the parts that will be interesting to your audience. Was there something that came up that was unexpected? Did you do something and recognize that maybe it was the wrong route and revert, and pivot? Highlight that. That's really interesting and something that your readers will get engaged with. And the other stuff, I'm not saying not to include it, but you don't maybe have to give it the same emphasis as well.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great advice, and really interesting to think of it from the other angle that, hiring managers are not necessarily looking for it to be the most unique thing they've ever seen. But like you say, it's more about don't get yourself eliminated, make sure that what needs to be there is there, and your ability to tell a story. I think that's all really good advice. So just a question around, when you were deciding to make your career switch, did you have any doubts? Did you go back and forth on it? How did you kind of make the decision to go for it and do it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so many doubts. I kind of brushed over this in the beginning, but I got rejected from medical school 3 times. That's pretty disheartening. When I was applying for school for UX design, I actually got rejected before I even started. That was pretty crushing because I had gone to career counseling. I knew this was going to be a good fit for me. I had the confidence going into it that this was going to be a great fit. And to have somebody tell me no before I even had the chance to start, it crushed me. I was legitimately very upset. So it was hard, but I did pick myself up and have that confidence from the career counseling. I have to give tons of credit to that, because I was able to figure out what I really need in a career and recognize that UX was going to be able to offer that for me. That I challenged the hiring or the recruiter on the phone with the school, did you make a mistake? Like, I think I should be able to start. They didn't make a mistake. They just didn't like what I put, but they still let me start. So being able to stand up for myself and, look at me now. Now they're asking me to speak at their events. So obviously I'm a success somewhat in their eyes. And I've come pretty far given where I started from. So it's really easy. Many people will plant doubts. So to also feel that for yourself is not going to do you any favors. As long as you're confident and you know that you want this, you can do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that and for being so honest, because I think sometimes from the outside, it can look like somebody has just had it really easy and then they got a job, no problem. And maybe there's some people out there wondering, are they doing something wrong? But it's good to know that everybody gets job rejections. Everybody gets
many. Yes.
So that doesn't mean it's the end of the road.
Absolutely. Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. So we have a question here just asking, did you only apply to entry-level roles? So with like 0 to 2 years of experience as a career transitioner, or would you apply to roles that needed or, specified more years of experience? And how do you decide what you can and can't apply for, I guess?
So to answer the question in short, I applied mainly for intermediate roles. And that wasn't because I was like, I'm so good, I'm an intermediate designer. There was just more of them. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I had a better chance at landing that if I was able to work in my past experience and make that sound relevant. Then I would go from 0 years experience to 1 or 2 in my eyes. And if I could justify that to a hiring manager, maybe they would feel the same way. In terms of what jobs you can and can't apply to, you can apply to anything. That list of requirements they have is a wish list. And if you meet 100% of the requirements, you really actually shouldn't be applying for that role. You should be applying for one higher up, because that won't push you to grow and keep developing. So if you meet 70% of the requirements, I would apply. That's what my mindset was. And those are most of the interviews that I landed actually were for those intermediate roles. So give it a shot. You really have nothing to lose other than a rejection, which you would be in the same position anyways if you didn't apply, right? So take a chance, and you never know what could happen with that.
Yeah, great advice. Okay, great. So yeah, a couple of people wondering, any other websites or sources that you would recommend or use for looking for jobs? I know you had a really nice kind of documentation for keeping track of jobs. Anything like that you would recommend as resources for people?
Yeah, ID8 Labs has a really good junior job board that they update fairly regularly. That was really beneficial for me when I was looking for roles, specifically for junior roles, because they can be hard to find. So they kind of compile all the roles together. Um, I don't have the link handy in my article that I put together, but ID8 Labs and just junior job board, if you Google that, I'm sure it will populate. But I was just looking for jobs mainly on LinkedIn, Indeed. Google's actually a great place to look. You just type it right in the search bar, a junior UX role remote, they'll populate, and you can sort based on your country or, the dates that you want to see. I would try to apply for roles that had been posted recently. Unfortunately, I don't have enough data to really substantiate this, but my mindset was if I can get my name at the top of the pile, maybe there's a better chance my application will actually get looked at, because sometimes you see those postings with 400, 500, 600 applicants. It's intimidating, and I don't want to necessarily waste my time. So that was one of my strategies. AngelList, if you're interested in working at a startup, they have some great opportunities as well. But yeah, those were the main ones I was looking for. Specifically in Canada, they had a different job board for internships in Canada, which could be a nice option, especially if you're just graduating from school. But those were the main ones that I was looking at when I was landing my first role.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you for that. I'm sure that will be really useful for everybody watching.
Yeah, of course.
And so what about then when you started working and got your first job? Maybe you could tell us a bit like that, what was that experience like? What challenges did you experience? Yeah, anything interesting from your first role that comes to mind?
Yeah, so my first role, I was working as a product designer at Proposify, again, which was a scale up, and they were a B2B SaaS company. So I was working in technology, helping send documents, which maybe necessarily didn't feel like my passion at the time, but I ended up recognizing how amazing the people and the culture was at the company. So I feel so fortunate to have landed there. I had a manager who was my biggest ally and my biggest support, which was, again, something really amazing that I don't take for granted in that position. And I was working I wouldn't say I was owning my own projects, but I worked on a squad as the only designer, and I worked closely with my manager to kind of make sure I was on the right track, which was a great experience to get that hands-on with developers, with PMs, strategizing and working together. That kind of soft launched me into a place where I could feel comfortable, taking the lead on projects where I have been recently as a senior designer. It was great. I really loved working with my team. I worked with a couple of different senior designers and my manager closely. I was the most inexperienced, but they never treated me as that. So I always felt equal. My opinion was valid. Some things maybe that I struggled with initially was it was 100% remote role, which is like what I wanted. And I knew I wanted that from the start, but there's certain challenges that come with that in terms of specifically bonding with your team and, building relationships. You really have to put the effort in. It doesn't just happen, make sure you're establishing those coffee chats, checking in with people, asking how their weekend was, starting to build those relationships, because it can be quite isolating actually working at home by yourself all day, seeing people maybe once in a meeting, So establishing those relationships is something that I look back on and recognize I probably could have done a better job of off the start. And I was also nervous, it was my first role, understandably so. And I was very quiet in meetings. And that was some of the feedback that I got early on, like, hey, Emily, like, speak up. Do you have any questions? What do you have to add? Because they hired me for a reason. I had to keep reminding me of that. They valued my opinion. And even though I wasn't the most senior person in the room, I still had something to bring to the table and a different perspective than everybody else there. So it took me a while to be more comfortable with that. But that was something that I wish that I wouldn't have been, so hesitant with at the start, because looking back, I had great ideas and I was just scared. So it can be normal to feel that way, and you don't have to feel like your opinion isn't valid.
Yeah, I think remembering that they hired you for a reason, exactly as you said. Yeah, it's an important thing to remember when you do get that first role, to be successful and to find your voice. Definitely. Okay, great. We're kind of nearly coming up on time, but we've a little bit more time for maybe one or two more questions. And thank you, Emily, for answering them all so honestly and well so far.
Of course.
I know we're jumping around a lot from topic to topic, but it's great, and I hope people are getting their questions answered. I'm sure they are. I guess I'm just wondering, do you have any experience with freelancing? And even if not, do you have any, I think some people are wondering, just would going into freelancing first be a viable option? Would you have any thoughts around that? Or maybe of some colleagues or peers that have gone into freelancing. Is there anything you could share on that?
So this is interesting because that was totally my perspective as well. When I was starting, I was like, oh, I'll start freelancing. That's easy enough. Like I'll get some experience, some real projects. I'll be able to talk about that. People will think I'm great. And it's not that simple. Not that I tried very hard. I want to make that clear. I put freelancing on my LinkedIn profile as if like that's what I was doing full time and just like waited for roles to appear, which is not how that works. One did miraculously materialize. Somebody was like, hey, like I can't do this project. Do you want to take it on? So I was in the talks actually with a company to basically rebrand their website for them, which was very exciting. First major UX project. And as soon as I sent them the quote for how much it would cost, I never heard back from them ever again. So maybe my budget was like way out of whack, but I felt like it was reasonable in terms of the amount of work I would have to put in the scope. Mm-hmm. Regardless, it actually was very beneficial, not because of how much I learned from doing the project, because the project never started, but in interviews, I could actually say, oh, I'm in the talks with this company, planning to rebuild this. This is what I'm doing right now. And that was all true, until time started to go on and I couldn't necessarily use that example anymore because I was still kind of waiting to hear back. But just being able to say, like, I'm talking with this developer, we're planning to build this, and just talk confidently about the work that I was planning to do ended up being an asset to my application package. I definitely want to preface this and say I'm not saying people should be dishonest, and that wasn't my intention with this. So if you're planning to do freelancing or wanting to go that road, I think it can be beneficial, but it's not necessarily a step that you have to take to get that role. So don't feel that pressure if it's not for you as well.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Okay, so I'll try and squeeze in two last questions if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So first up is maybe you could talk a little bit about platforms to build portfolios on. A couple of people wondering about best platforms, or maybe you could talk about the platform you use or your experience.
Yeah, so I use Squarespace for my portfolio. Very easy, drag and drop, no coding required. Makes it awesome for me to change the layouts. They have different pre-built templates if you want. It's a little pricey. It's around like 200 Canadian dollars a year, I think. You can get your first month for free to kind of try it out. There's other platforms that are free or cost less. I know I have friends that use Semplice or Wix, and some people are like, oh, you got to go Webflow. And if you want to have like a custom portfolio that's, done exactly the way you want, Webflow might be the answers. But I think there's probably better areas you can invest your time in while you're trying to build your portfolio and get your application package off the ground rather than learning how to code personally. But, to suit yourself, there's also free platforms as well. I think UXfolio might be free. Adobe has a portfolio platform. Again, like, it doesn't have to be the flashiest, most impressive portfolio in the world. That's why I'm fine with like a website builder, and it still works to me for this day. So don't feel like you have to learn how to code to make a custom website. Do something that you can get off the ground and use to apply for jobs. And then maybe if you want to revisit that a year down the line, when you want to do a refresh, that might be a time to kind of pick up something a bit more taxing.
Yeah, definitely. I think when people talk about building a website, it starts to sound very complicated. But as you say, it's been made very easy by some of the services that are out there and available now.
Absolutely. Don't give yourself any more hurdles than you need in the job application process.
Definitely. Okay, so for the last question before we finish up, I think it might be a nice one to give people some listening for after this session. Would you have any UX or design podcasts you'd recommend?
Oh, I have the hardest time finding design podcasts that I legitimately like listening to, which sounds really bad as a UX designer. I'm more interested in like books. I've actually found some really great UX books. Maybe I can talk about that. Articulating design decisions. That one has been like a game changer. It talks about how important soft skills are and different things you can do to articulate your design decisions and get stakeholder buy-in, which is arguably the most important thing that can happen to you as a designer. You could have the perfect solution in the world, but if nobody believes it, it's not going to get built. So that was a game changer for me. I would highly recommend that book. And I've been picking up a couple extra ones as well. I picked up one when I was interviewing about design challenges of course, I can't remember the name now. It's escaping me, but there's a really great book. It has a pen on the cover. Many people have probably seen it, to help get ready for design challenges, because that's something that we'll often face in the industry going into interviews that I didn't really touch on.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been looking at just like some other books that aren't necessarily UX related, but just general design related, art related. There's a lot of overlap actually in the industry and different skills that you can practice on. Actually taking a watercolor class right now, not UX related, but playing around with different mediums and stuff can also help sharpen some skill sets that maybe you didn't recognize would be beneficial as well.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, cool. Well, that's great. Hopefully people will have something to read then this evening.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Emilie, thank you so much for your time. It's been really great speaking with you, and I know everybody took a lot from both your presentation and the Q&A. So thank you for being so generous with your answers as well. We really appreciate it. For everybody who is viewing, we'll share the link to Emilie's article in the chat now, so you'll have access to that. And we will also just finish up by sharing some of the details of our courses on screen. So if anybody wants to hang around to have a look at those, that would be great. But Emilie, for now, I will say thank you so much again. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks everyone for tuning in. It was great chatting, and we'll talk to you later.
Okay, thanks again. Bye.
See ya.